So I'll talk a bit about a PhD in the arts I did, which was called Mantle of the Expert 2.0, from dramatic inquiry towards an artistic result in arts education. And maybe it's good first to say that a PhD in the arts, it's not really the same as a scientific PhD. It's a PhD that is based on artistic practice. So only an artist can conduct research in the arts, and reflection that the artist links to it can take place both within and about his or her individual practice, and subsequently also about artistic practice in a more general sense, where discipline related knowledge or meaning can be shared. So that is what I did between, well, I did first a research of 2 years, and then afterwards a PhD from 2018 until earlier this year. Okay, so maybe you can go to the next slide. And then, amongst other things, next to desk research, literature study, and all kinds of things, I did 4 case studies where I worked with children between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. And I made non-scripted performances with them. And I worked with Mantle of the Experts. So, and I made 4 performances. You can see them there: the Animal Rescuers, the Bold Robbery, the Stage Rats, and Undone was the last one. And I try to investigate how the artistic process and product can be balanced in a healthy way, because very often within arts education you see that either there's a specific focus on process and the product is less important, or the result isn't of very good quality, for example, or the other way around. The focus is so extremely on the product that the process isn't very qualitative. So that is what we often see in Belgium, at least in Flanders, that this balance is well, that there isn't any balance actually, and that there is mostly a real focus on the product. So what one of the things I found, and you may go to the next slide, is that, well, when working in Mantle of the Expert, you work in these 2 worlds of in and out of fiction modus. I think this is a model that was designed by Brian Edmiston together with Tim Taylor. It's in Tim's book, A Beginner's Guide to Mantle of the Expert, where you have these 2 worlds: the real world of the classroom, and then there's this imaginary world, which you can step into and step out of to investigate all kinds of things. In the real world, you learn all kinds of things you need to be able to continue the story in the imaginary world. So so I started from that, and you may go to the next slide. And one of the things I found was that when you're working in an arts educational setting, that actually there are 2 extra worlds you are addressing to, because within this first and second world, if you look at artistic competencies, you see that there is an indirect development of certain artistic competencies, but not all of them, of course. And when you work towards an artistic product, well, you need to address some artistic competencies in a real direct way. So it makes that there are 2 extra worlds, and I'll explain them a bit. And give an example of it. For example, so the first world is the real world of the process. The participants research and learn about things that occur in the imaginary context, and they acquire knowledge, skills, and attitudes they need to continue the story in the fictional world. For example, maybe they are cast as a team of archaeologists that are commissioned by the British Museum to collect artifacts in a tomb that they discovered in Egypt. That could be the context. So in the first world, things to be explored can be, what does an archaeologist do? And also, what powers and responsibilities does he or she have? What funeral rites did ancient Egypt have, for example, and all kinds of things that you can research in the real world of the process. So that is out of the fiction into the process. Then the second world is the imaginary world of the process. The participants are cast as a team of experts carrying out an assignment at the request of a fictional client. And together with the teacher or the drama teacher, the children develop a narrative in the imaginary world. And in it, they incorporate the knowledge, the skills and attitudes they acquired in the real world, and they are confronted with unprecedented situations that present them with new challenges. For example, the archaeologists discover a tomb with unusual inscriptions. That is a reason to step out of the fiction to do some research about it, for example. So that is in the fiction process. And then there's this third world, and this is where the direct development of artistic competences come in, and that I think is very typical for an arts educational setting. The imaginary world of the product. The participants represent a team of experts in the narrative they co-created and that they present to an audience. And in doing so, they monitor their performance skills during the artistic performance. So it's a kind of self-spectatorship. For example, the archaeologists discover the tomb and they adapt their dramatic play to the available space, the scene, and to the transmission to the audience. That is something they need to be able to do within the imaginary world. So that is in the fiction, in function of the product. And then there's the fourth world, the real world of the product. The participants directly develop artistic competencies that enable them to communicate the narrative to an audience. For example, the actors practice audibility, accuracy, finishing their work, spatial awareness, projection, and those kinds of things. So that is out of the fiction, but in function of the artistic product. So it is my, I think that a teaching artist or a drama teacher needs to address these four worlds. And I experienced that in Flanders, at least, when I talk to drama teachers, when I observe their lessons and all kinds of things, that they're mostly focused on worlds 3 and 4. It's mostly with the product they're busy. They are thinking about, okay, what are we going to present to an audience, and what do the children have to be able to do so? And the process, that is not something they give a lot of attention to. It is my finding that in Belgium, in Flanders, drama teachers aren't familiar with forms of process drama. And for example, with Mantle of the Expert, is when I do workshops with them, and it's like that their eyes open up, like, okay, these are worlds we are not familiar with, or we don't really engage in during our lessons, because we are always very product oriented. And this is a model that helps them to not forget that it is this process, this working in process, that makes the product so much richer, and that enables them to make a much more healthy balance between the artistic process and product. So that is just one example of when talking about process and product in Mantle of the Expert. That is something that in Flanders I try to implement it more and more within drama teacher training. Maybe there are questions about it, or
Shall I stop sharing now, Bob?
Yeah, I think
that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that what you said, Bob, about the self-spectator is really critical here. That you've got over the weekend in the workshops that we're doing, I'm going to be sharing some charts, some diagrams that I found in the archive that Dorothy produced, and she was talking about 4 levels of drama work, from improvisation and process through to theatre. And she really sees a continuum between these, and that you can be shifting all the time between them. And that, but she also in these documents, she reproduces a chart that I think was produced by one of her students, which is like a graph, which goes from initial stages. And there's the key element in this graph is the increasing element of the self-spectator. And this is coming through in process work as much as in product or performance work, that it's this awareness. It's not just you're doing it, but I know I'm doing it. I know I'm using it. I'm using sign for, even if it's not a performance, it's within the context of the process that you're doing. You are consciously using sign to make this happen, to make the drama happen. And there's increasing awareness then of these elements that you're talking about, which are the elements of using the art form, of using sign, of using space, and so on. And that I think is there in the whole continuum that Dorothy was talking about. So that I think for her, that concept of the self-spectator is crucial.
Yeah, and I in my understanding, it's also Dorothy thought of the self-spectator also in terms of the knowledge, like the knowledge they acquire in the curriculum. Not only learning something, but knowing that I know it. Like it's not only about the drama elements, or but also about the curriculum learning, I think.
Yeah, and this idea of a self-spectator sounds odd. But I saw a video of her recently where she talked about it, and when she used this phrase, the self-spectator, she did this. She made a gesture to the back of her head as if this is where the self-spectator resides. There's part of you almost like detached and looking down and watching what you're doing. And I think that's the self-spectator. I think she was always aware of where things were happening in the brain, whether it's this side, or in this case, it's at the back. But Vaishali, have you any comments on this idea? I think it's very clear what Bob is setting out, this continuum, the process and product elements. And I think one of the things about the product element in something like Mantle of the Expert, when they are coming to a point where they share something or they demonstrate something, they are consolidating their learning through those moments of formulating it as a statement in a way, which can be a performance statement in the end.
Right. No, I completely follow what Bob is saying, and his process is something which he's just made it so simple in front of us that this is what we do eventually when we are working from process to product. What I feel, and I'll just share with you what we had tried over the pandemic, when we talk about process and process inside the product. As we are performing the product, we are also doing the process. So I'll share that with you. But I'll talk from an Indian context, because in India, product is extremely important. And I think that's with many other countries. I have been talking to Eleonora. She says the same thing, about Italy, that nobody understands process over there. So I heard from Amanda last in the teacher education talk that she was doing. She said that if the process is very, very rich, and Bob also reiterated it, the product is bound to be extremely rich. So it's, for us, it becomes very important in India, especially Indian teachers, because we are working always against, a syllabus and a timeline. And the only chance that any drama teacher would get to showcase her work is during an annual function day, or a Founders Day ceremony where they have to put up a show. What we do over here is that throughout the year, I mean, I can talk about my organization, my academy, where we work. So we work throughout 11 months, and slowly and steadily we keep building these blocks through process. So there's a little mini product at the end of every process, and those products kind of sub in, and then we have a final product, like a bouquet. The other thing that I also believe, and I have seen this happen, and I was talking to Bob the other day, and we discussed about going from concrete to abstract to concrete again. So it's very important for children to hold something tangible, to be able to say that, yes, I have learned this, or I know this. The concept of self-spectator is something which probably children would be able to articulate only when they are of 14, 15, maybe, a little older than that as well. But it becomes very important for children who are 8, 9, and 10 to have something concrete. And that's the reason product becomes very important for them. And without product, they don't feel anchored. And if they don't feel anchored, then the whole reason why we are doing drama or bringing drama is to see a happy person at the end of the day, to see a person who's responsible at the end of the day. That kind of falls flat, because then the child is not able to see himself or herself finish something and present something. And that's where product becomes very important for 8, 9, 10-year-olds. So when we work with a product, and we then create the process out of the product and go back to the product. I just would like to show you something that we had created. If you can just show the PDF. This is the starting point of this process drama game that we had created, called Smoke and Mirrors. We would take, so we would make these case files borrowing from Sherlock Holmes stories. So our children, they don't read Sherlock Holmes. All they care for is Percy Jackson and the others. So they know there's somebody called Sherlock, but that's Robert Downey Jr. That's Sherlock Holmes, or Benedict Cumberbatch is Sherlock Holmes. So I wanted to bring Sherlock Holmes to them, and this is what we did. So can we scroll down this PDF, or is it just this? Yeah. So if you see, we created this case file, which is a starting point, and where we bring in our children, a mantle of detectives, basically. And then here's where we went a little away from Mantle, David, where children did not stay as detectives. They went into other roles as well. So through this, thank you. I mean, we can stop this now. So we would give a little bit of an idea about what the characters were, or what the case is and what has happened, and then we would just give them that much. And then after that, they would create the role themselves, work on them, and then there would be an investigation kind of a scene where the game master, or I am the game master. So I kind of ask them the questions, and they come in with their testimonials, and each one is a suspect in the game. So we do this detective game, and they're performing. As they perform, they are also using all the information that they had to kind of research on before they got into performance. So this was, I think, an amazing blend of performance and research back to back. And every time I would see the children become, in role, and when they're performing, they're very, the self-spectator is definitely working over there, because they're very aware of what they are doing and what the character does and how different these two people are. Because if they would bring back their character, their own character, then they would get caught. So the rules were such, and everybody enjoyed this. We got an audience to watch this as we played and as we went into process. So this was something that we tried, and it worked really well. We also created a small little teaser, which is also a product. And this was also made after consulting with children, and they suggested that this is something that we should do for this product. And if we can just show that video once, it's a short 30-second. Can we show that video?
Yeah, just give me a second. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'll do this.
Okay.
It's just decided to disappear for some reason.
So we have been experimenting, trying a lot of things, but I think essentially product becomes very important for a child to be able to go up on scene, especially in an Indian context, where children generally, and especially children who are very quiet, they're suddenly immediately labeled shy or immediately labeled something slow or dull, or they use such terms, and it becomes really important for children to then go up on stage and do something. It does not matter of how great of a quality it is, but having some kind of a product is very important. And Dorothy also says publishing. I think that's great, and we have started doing that. Yeah,
I'm ready now, Vaishali.
Okay,
I didn't want to interrupt you. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So all these words that you see, they are what children came up with. They came up with these words, and we use these words to create this promo video. And they were thrilled about it. And the kind of confidence that it gave them, there were two girls who were very quiet. They wouldn't talk. But the moment they would get into the role, something would happen and they would start talking in character. And I think product does that. I am a product of theater. So I have done a lot of theater, and I see how it changes you. Every time you go on stage, you're performing, it changes you. I don't know what happens. Maybe the academics will be able to tell me that. But I have tried, and I've really tried to bring mini product instead of a large product, in a staggered way throughout the year, and then do a exposition of the sort where all the children come together, they do the product, they show it, and then they share on stage with the parents, and their friends who come to watch of their process. And I think that is really encouraging for them. So yeah, we cannot think of process and product differently, because if there's a product, there has to be a process, and if there is a process, we're definitely working towards a product. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vaishali. Yes, Just bringing Amanda in, who's in the room with me at the moment. So bringing her into this. Yes, I think that this, I think these charts that I've mentioned that I'm going to be sharing at the weekend, and I've also talked to Maggie Hilson, the publishing it in the NATD journal. I think this could be quite radical in terms of our understanding of Dorothy's work, because she's talking about, from the beginning, an awareness of the art form, of using drama, of consciously using drama. And in fact, she would say you can start this with young children. In fact, you can be giving them feedback to make them aware of what they are doing. And we seem to think of Dorothy's work maybe of being divorced from that kind of working within the art form. In fact, she was criticized for that, but she was absolutely doing it and encouraging children to be conscious of doing it.
There's a danger. I was talking to some teachers this afternoon. I was teaching online, and there's a danger, I think, with any kind of mantle of the expert. I think that they think that we're doing something about tsunamis and floods, actually, in this context. And they were saying, well, I'll teach the children this, and I'll teach them that, and I'll do that, and then they'll be able to go into the mantle. Now, that's not what you mean, is it?
No,
it's like because what I'm saying is you can start in the fictional world, can't you? You can start in the fictional world and you can explore things. And as Dorothy used to do very often, she would have materials, maps, things that carried the information and the knowledge that people would dig for, but it was always very invitational. So it was invitational, they would explore. Yeah. But she would prepare things so fully, wouldn't she, for images and concrete stuff that she would have available. And yes, they wouldn't find all the answers, but they certainly find some very useful questions. And then from that, maybe go into the classroom world where they might research further. I just wanted to share that, because I know that there is this danger with teachers I worked with who think we learn about it and then we can act it out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not actually see the pedagogy as being extremely exploratory and stimulating the need for the research, if you like.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, I know that's not what you meant, it was very clear really, but I just highlight that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you found that amongst teachers as well, but.
Yeah, it's also, I don't change the approach of Mantle of the Expert. It's like, I think I first really dug into it myself in what Mantle of the Expert is and how the approach works and so on, and it's afterwards that it's because I saw so many worthy elements and I saw the artistic value in it also, that I thought, well, this could be very valuable within an art educational setting. And that's what I wanted to address and what I wanted to investigate. Like it's sometimes it seems like Mantle of the Expert, and we put it in drama in education, and education in drama is a totally different world. Like they are two separate things. And I really wanted in my research to bring them together. Like drama in education can be very worthy within education in drama. That's actually what I try to combine those two.
Yes, I think that's right, and I think we have moved on, thankfully, from the whole argument between this is drama or is it theatre. I mean, that was a question that was raised many years ago, and I'm really glad to hear Vaishali saying that if you have a product, you've got to have a process, because one lends itself to the other. And I think people like Jonathan Nealons and Gavin Bolton have given us very good definitions about what we mean by theatre now. Whereas in the past, I think people thought theatre was watching a play, and it's the way it functions. It's what the function of it is. But theatre isn't just watching a play. Theatre is all those ingredients of, contrasts and symbols and signs, and they're used in performance and they're used in process. So, I think that was very useful, actually. And it, as you say, you're combining them all. So that sounds like an excellent piece of work you've been doing for your PhD.
Thank you. Sorry, I think I disappeared because we lost
David, you disappeared.
So thank you for taking over, Yona.
I stepped in. I pretended to be you. I pretended to be you. I went all intellectual. I did, honestly. I did. I even mentioned books and people that you've never heard of.
Hear that? Yeah.
Oh, yes. I went down a storm.
I needn't have worried.
But I think Ava has got a question.
I see Ava's got her hand raised, yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to say to Bob that I thought the 4 dimensions were really clear in terms of laying out the process of how to be in role and the meshing of the imaginary world and the real world and the process and the product. Is that work actually, is that diagram in your PhD? Would other people be able to access that remotely, through your published thesis?
Yes, I for the moment, because my thesis is in Dutch, and I'm working on an English translation, so it's not finished yet, but it will be published.
That's great.
And then also to ask to Vaishali is you talked about how in India the need for product was so important, and I just wanted to kind of, I suppose, just ask that question really about who that audience is, because I mean, I think that even if the children are performing to each other, it's the act of being witnessed that creates the theatre. Is that what you were meaning, or were you meaning that you would bring other children from other classes into the classroom?
No, both actually. The act of performing in front of your classmates, the act of performing actually, to be the essence of the entire way of learning that we have always had, and this is generational. I'm not talking about this generation or the last generation. I'm talking about over thousands of years, and performance has been a part of our teaching and learning. That is how we have, and I had mentioned it on a chat during Amanda's session also, that in the way we would teach and learn in the Vedic times, which is before the Mughal invasions happened in India, before Genghis Khan came, it was exactly like this. It was that there would be a guru, and you study with the guru, and you ask a question, and then you share your answers with your classmates all the time. It's all about sharing, and the sharing always happens through stories only, and that's how the oral tradition of storytelling has kind of helped us to retain the essence of learning and teaching and learning. And you'll see most of the Indian people around you are very good auditory learners. So if you tell them something, they will remember it, because that's something which is genetically inside us. And it's very important for us to also watch and be watched. So yes, you're right. It is important for an Indian to share to a group of people. That has been a culture. And drawing from there, that's why product becomes very important for us.
But it's also the doing, isn't it? It's that kinesthetic learning, that inhabiting, the embodiment of it. So there's the being the witness, but then also physically doing, taking on a role that is not you. And that gives us the freedom to be more expressive, because we are not ourselves. And I think that perhaps was what you were alluding to earlier on, about where does this confidence come from? Because we have another mask on, we have another role on, we are inhabiting someone else. So through them, we can explore these other forms of expression.
Right.
I know that Yona was saying this division between process and product seems very old, and it is, because I remember an article that Cecily wrote in the 1980s, which was saying this barrier between performance and process is finally breaking down, and yet we've still got it. We've still got it. And in fact, it goes, like Bob is saying, it actually goes the other way, that you've got teachers who understand product, but don't understand process and see how it could really deepen the work, if we go back to the sort of work that Dorothy was doing. I've got Amanda sitting here with me, and I think she's had some thoughts on what she's heard from Vaishali and so on.
Oh, thank you very much, everybody, for those really interesting presentations. One of the, well, there were three things that jumped out at me, actually. Thinking about what you were saying there about the kinesthetic, Ava, and the visual, this idea of the self-spectator. It's something that sort of caught my thinking maybe a few years ago, that in a typical drama lesson, whether it's Mantle or otherwise, we tend to see this practice of, right, you've got 4 minutes to do this, and then you've got to show it. And it just struck me that youngsters in a drama lesson are having to, that they work in a space in a very kinesthetic and in very embodied way, but they've got to prepare this in order for somebody to see it. So the whole sensory networks across the brain seem to me to be quite complex. And we do hear sometimes children being a little bit chastised. You're not facing the front, you're not standing in the right place. And you think, well, actually, if they're in what we perhaps look more like dramatic mode, it feels perfectly fine. But then suddenly we say, well, now you're going to share it, and push them into a sort of a theatrical sort of presenting mode, and it's not fine at all. And that jump between the kinesthetic, which is absolutely right for drama and process and all the thinking that we want them to do, and the meaning making, all the cognitive development, there is another dynamic which needs to be nurtured and considered in order to allow that to be turned into sort of into a kind of theatre for sharing with others, which is essentially going to be about somebody else's hearing and listening. And I'm not sure we've really thought about those sensory connections enough in our profession, and you just brought that back to my thinking. So thank you for that. Something that I need to think about even more. I also love the idea of them being, of youngsters being, actually, when you're enrolled, you are a researcher of yourself. And that's another area of self-development and self-realization, self-actualization, where I think we've still got quite a lot more work that we could do. So yeah, this has opened up a lot of fields where more is possible, I think. So thank you for that. Yeah,
I think in our teacher education, when we're training teachers, there are certain principles that we can try and embed. And one of them is the importance of sign, and this goes across process and performance. But it's also this idea that Dorothy had, that drama is a laboratory, and we are researching human behavior, and we are exploring human behavior and the meaning of human behavior in different contexts. It's a laboratory for exploring these things. And that, I think, goes across all of the different types of drama that we might be doing, in performance and in product work, process and product work. It's about, as you say, research. We're researching something. We should be on the edge
of what we know and on the border of what we don't yet know. Really, in a drama lesson, impossible to do every single lesson, but I would say that that's something that perhaps we should be thinking about doing. Are we really taking them to the edge of our existence, our knowledge, so that they're constantly discovering something? It might not be new to you and me, but is it new for them? To get that, you know, the whole cognitive development behind theatre, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way of putting it, on the verge of what they don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, Domak, is there any questions and comments in the chat that we should be looking at?
No, I can't see any questions.
Oh, thank you, Domak. I love your your long hair now. You know, I think it looks like this is post-COVID, I think, isn't it? That your image has changed. You let it grow and you're keeping it like that.
Thank you so much. It's a work in progress. Let's put it this way.
Okay, Bob, if I can ask you, and this whole thing about that Amanda was just talking about, this point when they are stopping process and kinesthetic experience and they are moving into performance mode, which has different modes. this seemed to be something that you were talking about in terms of this process and products, where there might come a moment where they have to. I'm sorry, I've got some noise. I've got Cecily O'Neill causing noise and the disruption in the background. But yes, Bob, is there a moment of switch for you from the performance mode to the product mode?
Yeah, I think that maybe you noticed that in the model I showed, within the circle, the line between process and product, it wasn't the full line. It was a bracket line, or how do you call it? So it's not like they're strictly divided from each other. I think there are one crosses the other. And for example, to give an example, in my first case study, the children casted themselves as animal rescuers that rescued escaped animals, wild, dangerous animals that escaped from zoos, and they would go look for them, and they would solve the problem. And we came across this. We worked on it for a long time without thinking about a product or about a performance or anything. But of course, there was this moment where we began to think, okay, what are we going to? There is this date planned, and people bought a ticket, and they're going to come and watch. And what are we going to do? And so we talked about it. And we agreed that it would be like an open, like we would organize an how do you call it in English, like an open day where people came and visit their enterprise, something like that. Like they would meet the animal rescuers, and they would just come and visit. We have something in Belgium that is called like an open enterprise day, and people can come and watch, can come and visit all kinds of enterprises and see how they work. So that was really the form we created. Like people could come and see who the animal rescuers were and how they worked. And we organized like a Q&A. People in the audience could ask questions to the animal rescuers. And there was also, they would also do a training session with the audience. So they would invite people from the audience to do a training in how to react when you are confronted with a dangerous animal. And so all those kinds of things. So for them, it came quite natural, the evolution from process to product, because they could still, as a team of animal rescuers, think about, well, what do we need to address when we speak to the people, when they will ask us questions, or when they. So these product elements came also into the process. And there wasn't the feeling of, oh, now we suddenly have to think about a product, and we need to take care of all different kinds of elements, or we have to take a totally different focus or anything. It was like a next step in the process that we would prepare for presenting ourselves for the audience. Is that an answer to your question?
Yes, absolutely. And it's when you've got a frame, like a mantle frame to begin with, then the element of performance, the purpose of that is built into it, isn't it? And what they are doing is they are demonstrating their understanding, or demonstrating meaning to an audience. And it's definitely something that Dorothy did herself with, she might use chamber theatre, for example, where there's a performance at the end where the children are sharing their understanding of a story. And that is very much what they are demonstrating, rather than simply thinking, I'm going on stage and I'm doing a performance. So I think that kind of performance element becomes a publication, becomes a form of publishing the work and public sharing of the work. Yes.
I'd like to just add to this. I think defining what a product is very important in this case, because products can be of multiple kinds. And what Bob just shared was a very highly interactive product where parents can come in, people who have come to watch them can come and have an interaction with children. So I think how we look at a product also, and how we define product to the audience who's coming in, that also becomes very important. Not all products needs to be full-fledged show or a performance where everybody is acting and dancing and singing and they can't show their backs. I think that is something which entirely depends on how the teacher is kind of protecting the children into the product. And I think what Bob did is something which is something that we all do. Whoever wants to kind of give the children that space to to own it. I think what you did, Bob, is something which any drama teacher who really wants to do something with the process would do. But the beautiful thing about the process is that it kind of gives a clear indication, a step-by-step process of how to look at it. And that's something which teachers need. They don't have it. I teach through, I use a lot of intuitive teaching. So I know what I'm doing, but many don't. So I think that that situation, or whatever you have, what do you call that, Bob? What do you call the thing, the diagram? Does it have a name?
The four worlds.
Model. Yeah, the four worlds model. So the models would really help a teacher to kind of take the child through, or take her children through the process into product, where she probably redefines what a product is. Not necessarily that you have to put up a show. Not necessarily that you have to wear kind of a costume. So I think defining product becomes very important also. Just drawing from that.
Well, my experience is that the non-scripted element is very important in it.
Yeah.
That is something that, in my experience, creates ownership, and so I never work with a scripted performance. There is, at the end, there is a kind of a scenario, so they know what we like, what we more or less what we are going to do, but it isn't scripted. There aren't strict lines they need to memorize or they need to. So and that gives them, as they say themselves, the feeling we can't do anything wrong, because there are no
Right.
lines we need to say, so we can't do anything wrong. And I think that's perfect.
Yes.
If that is what you feel, and if you're on stage and you say, well, I can't do anything wrong, then that is what you see in the performance and in how strong they
and I think that is what the teacher also wants, the children to finally learn the takeaway from the entire process is that, yeah, you can't go wrong, you can be right. There's nothing called wrong. You cannot go wrong. So when we did the smoke and mirrors, because it's something like a process into product, so it is embedded as a product the process is embedded into the product. So just to kind of give you a last thing about what happened later on. So after we did the Sherlock Holmes mystery thing and they solved it on their own, they asked us that what is the real story then? So we asked them to go and read it, and they read it. So my job as a teacher was done. I wanted them to read Sherlock Holmes, and they had it. So they came back with a review, and that was their product of the story. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to wrap up, I think, here. One of the I saw a film recently of Dorothy working with children, and she was talking to them about, okay, what do you want to do a play about? And one of the suggestions that came from the group was they'd like to do a musical. And some of the people in the group said, oh, we couldn't do that because we don't have the skills. We don't have the dance skills. We don't have the singing skills. We don't have music and so on. And she actually said, no, we could do it. We could do it. We could be a team, a production team, and we stage musicals. And we can be staging the best musicals in the world. And it seemed to me such a brilliant way of going into something that would satisfy their desire for the drama they wanted to do, and yet also not be a case that they've got to do all this training and performance skills. They could still achieve this through the process, through a frame of Mantle the expert and the expertise. Thank you, Vaishali. And thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
For a very stimulating session, for rounding off what has been an extremely stimulating and exciting day. You know, it's always exciting to see how these ideas are spreading now through the world, and a world community coming together on a day like this to share ideas and to
celebrate practice.
Celebrate practice. And
celebrate practice, yes.